Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Capital Budget Subcommittee meeting. On behalf of the subcommittee, I want to thank everyone for being here today. We're going to go ahead and start with the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and our budget analyst, Sarah Baker.
Okay, UMB has 3 projects in the CIP, with only the School of Social Work receiving funding in 26. And the discussion of the social work building begins on page 5. The 26th budget includes $5.8 million more than programmed last year, reflecting the accelerated schedule to allow the project to be completed by August 27, so the building will be open for fall semester. The total cost of the project increases by $3.6 million due to the addition of energy efficient enhancements that will make it a net zero facility. And this will improve the energy efficiency of the building by about 48%. DLS recommends reducing the GEO funding by $5 million for those costs attributed to the sustainability components, and a recommendation adds language to use PAYGO funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund Energy Efficiency Account to fully replace the reduced GEO authorization. And we also asked the President to comment on if any of the sustainability elements of the project are eligible for tax credits through the Inflation Reduction Act, and if so, what is the expected value of those tax credits? Discussion about your projects begin on page 6. And just note the first one is a new dental ambulatory surgery center, which is $2.3 million, has been authorized for the project. The total cost of the project has increased from $2.8 million to $10.1 million, but the state share only increases by $500,000, with the School of Dentistry providing the remaining funding. And this increase is related to current Medicaid and Medicare eligibility standards, in which require the suites to be physically separate, physically distinct from the other clinics. Without this separation, the center would not be able to bill Medicaid and Medicare. Discussion on the central electric substation and electrical infrastructure starts on page 7, and this is a multi-year phase project that will construct new substations in the north and south end of campus and upgrade the existing electrical infrastructure. As programmed in the CIP, funding is paused to 28 due to the delays in receiving developers' agreements for Baltimore City and challenges to integrating the technology to put in place to manage the new grid. And these factors have led to substantial delays in the completion of later bid packages. So UMB states that the bid packages have been coming in lower than the original estimates, resulting in a cash balance for the fund construction in the intervening years. The recommendations are on page 3 and 4, which are related to the GEO funding for the School of Social Work to be reduced by $5 million, with the PAYGO recommendation that will add back the $5 million in special funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. And that concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Ms. Baker. Any questions from the subcommittee for our budget analyst? This afternoon we have from the University of Maryland, Baltimore, Dr. Bruce Jarrell, and also Senior Vice President Dawn Rhodes. Dr. Jarrell, President Jarrell, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Chair Chang. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Bruce Jarrell, President of the University of Maryland, Baltimore. I'm accompanied by Dr. Dawn Rhodes, Senior Vice President for Admin and Finance. I want to thank Chair Chang, Vice Chair Lewis, and the committee for your support, and Sarah Baker for her always thoughtful analysis. The University of Maryland, Baltimore concurs with the Department of Legislative Services recommendations. We remain very deeply grateful to the Governor and the General Assembly for your support of our projects. I'm especially thankful for the additional $3.6 million for sustainability to our new School of Social Work. That is solar panels, geothermal exchange system, and high-performance envelope that will be funded through this, and will ensure that the facility is a model for green buildings within the University System of Maryland and the rest of the state. I have been asked to briefly comment on our project's eligibility for the U.S. Clean Energy Investment Tax Credits introduced through the Inflation Reduction Act. We expect that both our new School of Social Work and the General Electrical Infrastructure will be eligible to receive these credits. For the School of Social Work, up to $650,000 in credit, and for the Central Electrical Infrastructure, up to $900,000 in credits. While it is our hope that we will receive these credits, they will certainly be used to further UMB's efficiency goals. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you very much, President Jarrell. Any questions for President Jarrell from the subcommittee? Great, thank you very much. Have a great afternoon. That concludes the hearing for the University of Maryland, Baltimore. The committee will now move on to Towson University, and our budget analyst is Micah Richards. And from Towson University, Dr. Mark Ginsberg, president, would like to come up. Mr. Richards.
Good afternoon. My name is Micah Richards, and I want to thank the chair, committee, and the great state of Maryland for allowing me to speak before you today. This is the Tigers from the illustrious Towson University Fiscal 26 Capital Budget Analysis. Starting on page 1, in the exhibit, the total Fiscal 26 Capital Improvement Program request is around $71 million, are for the Smith Hall renovation. Page 2, in the exhibit, 99% of the $71 million is GO bonds. Page 3 will be discussed later in this presentation. Page 4, Townsend is currently completing program part 2 for submission to the Department of Budget and Management for the Academic Achievement Center. Page 4 and 5, when I went to Towsend's campus in December 2024, Smith Hall's East Wing was demolished and currently being rebuilt, and the West Wing is currently being renovated. On page 6, Exhibit 1, the total project cost of Smith Hall increased by around $13 million to around $166 million due to the new geothermal system and equipment costs. Sustainability is a major addition to this project. There is a cost estimate of around $9 million for the green building premium that is attributed to carbon reduction and the Climate Solutions Now Act. The goal is to have a net zero ready strategy to decrease fossil fuel energy production to earn a Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design Gold certification. The Inflation Reduction Act federal tax credits could partially reimburse this geothermal system. As stated on page 3 and 4, DLS recommends reducing GEO bond funding by $9 million for project costs due to the sustainability components. A related recommendation adds language to use pay-as-you-go special funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund Energy Efficiency account to fully replace the reduced GEO bond authorization. Page 7, the new Student Services Building will be constructed, and the existing Enrollment Services Building will be demolished. The funding will start in fiscal 2029. The electrical substation expansion and improvements project will provide power to the western portion of the main campus and the entire South Campus. The funding will start in fiscal 27. Page 8, the estimated operating impact in the fiscal 26 capital budget increased by 6 figures in fiscal 28, 29, and 30 compared to the fiscal 25 budget due to the project's total replaced and added gross square footage included in the 50% construction documents. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Richards. Are there any questions from the subcommittee for our budget analyst? Great. This afternoon, we have President Mark Ginsberg. Thank you very much for being here. Proceed.
Thank you, Chair Chang, and also Vice Chair Lewis. Thank you, and also thank you to members of the subcommittee. We're very appreciative of your support of TU and our capital projects. Also, special thanks to Michael Richards. Thank you for visiting our campus, Michael. It's good to have you there. And also, of course, to Sarah Baker, who also has served as an analyst for us. We're very grateful for your support and very much appreciate it. Today, Towson University enrolls nearly 20,000 students, of which 90% come from Maryland. 60% of our students identify as members of underserved minority groups, and 92% of our entire student body remain in Maryland after they graduate. I also often say that TU is an engine of opportunity where students of all backgrounds thrive and students of all backgrounds achieve success. We're an engine of innovation, a hub for consequential research and scholarship that is addressing the critical needs of our community. And we're also an engine of workforce development, training the workforce of tomorrow in Maryland and creating economic growth for our state and also our region. But TU's impact begins with our facilities. And we're very appreciative of the state's generous support for capital improvements in recent years, including this budget cycle. We're proud that TU is a modern campus with many state-of-the-art facilities, and this has helped TU achieve what I often speak of as greater greatness. As we consider and look to the future and our future facility needs, we thank you for and are very appreciative for your moving up the time frame for our electrical substation, a desperately needed capital improvement on our campus, as well as support for the geothermal energy project in Smith Hall, two critical upgrades to our campus infrastructure. Now, the matter of Smith Hall, that building is under construction. It's in flight, as we say, so far being on time and on budget. Very pleased about that. Also, our Academic Achievement Center, which will be built in the next few years. TU, as Mr. Richards suggested, cannot spend the bond money that has been appropriated until we receive final program approval from DBM. We're in the final phases of program approval and currently look forward to that so we can have the cash flow to make that project happen. This is a high priority for our university, and we're all very excited to get started on this transformative project. As mentioned in the DSL report, TU buildings have an average age of 25 to 30 years. Like many institutions, our older facilities require a substantial amount of deferred maintenance. We struggle to keep these facilities current with associated costs being high and have requested additional funding to support these efforts. These efforts will ensure, by the way, that we can continue to provide the best possible facilities for our students, in turn allowing us to provide a first-class 21st century education for them. To that end, TU soon will begin formulating the university's next campus master plan. We envision that this important planning process will provide a blueprint for our facility needs of both today and also for tomorrow. TU provides a robust return on investment for the state as well as for our students and their families. We're pleased to make a positive difference for Maryland both today and for the future. Together with your support, we will continue to serve as an engine for our state, an engine for its economic vitality. Again, thank you very much for the support that you've provided for Towson University. We are thrilled and very appreciative. Happy to answer any questions you might have. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my testimony this afternoon.
Great. Thank you very much, President Ginsburg. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for President Ginsburg? Great. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.
Let me say, too, before I finish that, sitting to my right, I should introduce to Steve Jones, who's our COO of the university.
Great. Thank you very much for being here. Have a great day. That concludes the budget hearing for Towson University. Committee will now move on to the University of Maryland College Park campus and our budget analyst, Ms. Sarah Baker.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. There are 3 projects receiving funding in 26, and the discussion of the interdisciplinary engineering building starts on page 5. This leverages $58.2 million from the Clark Foundation and will provide space to allow the engineering programs to grow. According to the CIP, the total cost of the project increases $19.7 million to $243.6 million, which accurately reflects the total cost of the project. The project includes various sustainability components, including wastewater recovery plant, energy efficient mechanical equipment, and provisions for photovoltaic array. As you've heard in the prior to analysis, DLS is recommending reducing the GEO funding by $4 million for those costs attributed to the sustainability components, and there is a related recommendation adding language to use PAYGO funds to fully replace those GEO funds. And we also asked the President to comment on if any of the sustainability elements of the project are eligible for tax credits through the Inflation Reduction Act, and if so, what is the expected value of those tax credits? The next project receiving funding is a standalone facility renewal initiative to address critical deferred maintenance projects. A list of projects funded in 26 are listed on page 7. It should be noted that the CIP pauses funding in 27 and resumes in 28. So DLS is recommending deferring the $7.5 million of GO bonds budgeted for 26 and instead provide them in 27. The project has been slow to encumber and expend funds, and projects proposed in 26 can still proceed using prior unencumbered authorizations and $5 million in revenue bonds authorizations for 26. The last project of the graduate student housing site development starts on page 8. This was added to the 24 CIP to continue development of a 10.75 acre site to make it more financially feasible for development a developer to build below market rate graduate housing. We note that General Assembly added language in the 25 budget expressing the intent that the state provides $5 million annually from 26 to 32 for the production and acquisition of below market rate graduate student housing at College Park and in the city of College Park. However, the CIP does not provide any additional funding after 26. Discussion of the out-year projects begin on page 9, and I want to note that the total cost of the Health and Human Sciences Complex increases $43.4 million due to the inclusion of the renovation of 2 floors in the original Cole Field House South Wings and fit-out shelf space for the Academy of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which will be funded by non-budgeted funds. Also, the cost for the renovation in addition to the Benjamin Building is estimated to increase by $40.6 million due to locating the non-research components of the School of Public Health in the renovated Benjamin Building. The recommendations are on pages 3 and 4 are related to the GEO funding for the new Interdisciplinary School of Engineering building be reduced by $4 million with the PAYGO recommendations that were replace that $4 million with special funds from the Strategic Energy Fund. In addition, on page 4 is a recommendation to defer the $7.5 million in GEO funding for the campus-wide building system and infrastructure project to 27. And that concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Baker, for the presentation. Other questions from members of the subcommittee? This afternoon we have from the University of Maryland College Park, Dr. Darrell J. Pines, President. Thank you, President, for being here.
Good afternoon. My name is Darrell Pines, and I'm the president of the University of Maryland. It's a pleasure and honor to be here today and have the opportunity to testify on behalf of the capital budget requests. I would like to thank Chair Chang and Vice Chair Lewis and the entire committee for your support of all of the universities, including the flagship University of the State of Maryland. We're extremely grateful of the resources devoted to us by the Governor and the General Assembly. And I want you to know we work diligently to be good stewards in our shared work toward benefiting the people and communities of the state of Maryland. We also appreciate the thoughtful legislative analysis by Sarah Baker and her team, and I would like to offer a few responses. First, the analysis recommends deferral of $7.5 million in GO bonds for campus-wide building system and infrastructure improvements to fiscal 2027. This will defer implementation of some critically needed deferred maintenance work planned to be funded in fiscal 2026. We respectfully request that you reject this proposed reduction. Second, the analysis of Zupnik Hall recommended that $54.7 million be funded from GEO bonds and $4 million from PAYGO bonds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund Energy Efficiency Account. This change of fund source is not concerning to our campus. I was also asked to comment if any of the sustainability elements of the project are eligible for tax credits through the Inflation Reduction Act, and if so, what is the expected value of the tax credits? Our response is that the Inflation Reduction Act does not provide tax credits for overall energy efficiency. It provides tax credits only for certain technologies of clean energy generation, such as solar, wind, geothermal, and electric vehicle charging stations. The only element in the project eligible for tax credit is electric vehicle charging stations, and that tax credit is negligible. And third, in terms of graduate student housing site development, the analysis notes that the intent of the General Assembly is that the state provide $5 million annually from fiscal year 2026 to fiscal year 2032 for the production and acquisition of below market rate graduate housing. We sincerely appreciate the General Assembly's support of our efforts to address the shortage of affordable housing for our graduate students. I'll be happy to take any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Pines, for your presentation. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Great. That concludes the hearing for the University of Maryland College Park. The committee will now move on to the University.
Go Terps. Thank you.
Committee will now move on to the University System of Maryland, and it's also presented by our budget analyst, Sarah Baker.
Okay. As you can see on the front page for University System Maryland office, there are 2 projects for System Office, the Caldwell Center and the Annual Facility Renewal Project. The recommendations on page 2 approve GEO authorizations, pre-authorizations, amendment to authorization, and approve all the ARBs. And I just wanted to provide an update on global campus renovation of the Adelphi building, in which the General Assembly added funds in fiscal 23 through 25. The budget includes a deauthorization for the 23 funds due to the completion of the project and deauthorizes the 24 and 25 funds due to the cancellation of the project. In addition, the CIP programs funds in 29 and 23 and in 30 for the renovation of the administration building, which is estimated to cost $42 million. And I wanted to note that Global Campus plans to use $10 million of the $72 million from the sale of the Largo properties for this project. And in addition, they do have $242 million in their plant fund. The discussion of the Caldwell Center project starts in the middle of the page, and this will be done in 2 phases. Phase 1 replaces the existing 29-year-old fabric roof that is at the end of its useful life, and phase 2 will refurbish the existing central plant that is also at the end of its useful life. The 26 budget includes 7.1 in GEO funding, which is $2 million more than program in last year's CIP, and this is related to the refurbishment of the central plant, in which an additional chiller needs to be added, as well as a new generator, since the current ones are at capacity. In addition, the cost to replace the fabric roof is $2.5 million less than budgeted due to initial construction budget being based on older estimates. Turning to USM's facility renewal backlog, which is shown on Exhibit 1 on page 5. Projects are categorized as either deferred maintenance or programmatic improvements. Deferred maintenance projects total $2.9 billion, of which electrical and mechanical systems account for 68% of the total. Programmatic improvements, which include renovations and remodeling, totals $2.8 billion. Overall, at $3.2 billion, College Park accounts for 55% of the total renovation costs. At its November 22 meeting, the Board of Regents adopted an updated facilities renewal policy. And the most significant change is shift in focus from inputs to outcomes to better reflect progress an institution is making to address its backlog. Under the revised policy, institutions are required to report on the Facility Condition Index, or FCI. Exhibit 2 on page 6 shows the FCI over 6 years by the institution. Now, the index shows the percentage of deferred maintenance spending relative to replacement costs. A lower score indicates facilities are in relatively good condition, and when tracked over time, shows if conditions are improving or not. So overall, 6 institutions experienced improvements in their FCI during this time period. So reducing the backlog is a priority of the Board of Regents and the chancellors, and has set a target that institution spending on facility renewal should be at 2% of the current replacement value of facilities greater than 10 years old. Since the previous policy did not fully capture all the funds, both operating and capital, expended by institutions, a directive from USN clarified what expenditures can be included in an institution's calculation of its 2% spending goal, which are listed on page 7. Overall, USM is attacking its backlog through various funding sources, as shown on Exhibit 3 on page 8. Prior to 2020, facility renewals was mostly funded from institutions' operating budgets and ARBs. Even though over the years, institutions have increased their spending on renewals, these funds account for a smaller share of spending, declining from 70% to almost 50% by 25, while expenditures related to the renovation of projects in the CIP increased from 17% to 43%. This reflects USM's focus on renovation and replacement projects rather than new projects. In 23, you'll note that institutional spending decreased by $32.5 million, which may be attributed to $65 million in PAYGO funds, which under the revised policy counts towards the institution's 2% goal. In 25, institutions budgeted $183.2 million for facility renewals project, but BPW reductions resulted in a 1% reduction of USM appropriations, which resulted in some institutions to reduce their spending on renewal projects. And now the allowance includes a 5% or $111.1 million reductions to USM appropriations, of which USM institutions plan to reduce overall spending on facility renewals by an estimated total of $11 million. So we asked the Chancellor to comment on the impact of institutions reducing their spending on facility renewals and their ability to meet their 2% target. Now, institutions can transfer operating funds to the plant funds, which are like a savings account in which institutions can set aside funds for anticipated capital expenditures. As listed on page 9, these funds can be set aside for various purposes, including facility renewal, deferred maintenance, and debt service. As shown on Exhibit 4 on page 10, between 23 and 24, state-supported plant funds decreased by $139 million due to spending on capital projects. Moving on to the 2% target, Exhibit 4 on page 10 compares the spending on facility renewal by institution based on the previous and the revised policy, which when including the CIP or system-funded projects, it results in some institutions exceeding their 2% target. And you'll note that Bowie exceeded their target by 16.6 percentage points. If not for the inclusion of projects in the CIP, 5 institutions would have fallen below their target. Since the inclusion of the CIP project does not provide an accurate picture of how much institutions are spending on renewal and if they are consistently achieving their target, System Office should continue to report on the progress of institutions are making towards the 2% target when excluding the impact of the CIP. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baker, for your presentation. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for Ms. Baker? This afternoon, we have from the University System of Maryland, the Chancellor, Dr. J. Perman, also Ms. Ellen Herbst, and also Mark Beck. Chancellor Perman, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Chair Chang, Vice Chair Lewis, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of the governor's capital budget recommendations for the university system. I am joined by Senior Vice Chancellor Ellen Herbst, as well as Mark Beck, our Associate Vice Chancellor for Capital Planning. Ms. Baker, thank you as always for your analysis. I'll save the bulk of my time for the question that you posed. But first, I need to share my appreciation for your support of our collective capital program, which, as you know, is really essential to our ability to deliver on our missions, to our academic and research excellence. This keeps us among the nation's most productive and innovative systems of public higher education. It should come as no surprise that our capital requests this year primarily concern, as the analysts pointed out, renovation and replacement projects. And that provides a perfect segue to the question we've been asked to address, namely, the impact of our university's commitment to reducing facilities renewal expenditures and their ability to meet the 2% target. I addressed this issue in our operating budget hearing, so I'll quickly reprise those challenges. We believe that spending reductions will grow our deferred maintenance backlog, could increase our costs in outlying years as our campus buildings age. Cuts to deferred maintenance, yes, will inhibit our work to keep critical building systems functional, which could in turn disrupt student learning and jeopardize building and student safety. Several universities have or are detailing critical building systems that are already struggling and already disrupting operations. At the same time, the state's strong support for facilities renewal and whole building renovation and replacement is going to help address these very problems. So yes, there's an impact due to reductions in our operating budget. That's what makes our capital budget requests that much more important. So I thank you for your support. And of course, my colleagues and I are happy to address your questions.
Great. Thank you, Chancellor Perman. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for Chancellor Perman, University System of Maryland? Great. Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing for the University System of Maryland. The committee will now move on to Salisbury University, presented by Micah Richards. And we have from the president of Salisbury University, Dr. Carolyn Ringer-Lepre.
this is the Seagulls of the illustrious Salisbury University Fiscal 26 Capital Budget Analysis. Starting on page 1, in the exhibit, the total fiscal 26 capital improvement program request is around $35 million, all for the Blackwell Hall renovation. Page 2, in the exhibit, 100% of the $35 million is GO bonds. Page 3, DLS recommends for all GO bond authorizations and pre-authorizations for Salisbury University to be approved. Page 3 and 4. When I went to Salisbury's campus in September 2024, the construction for Blackwell Hall had started in August 2024. The funding plan shifted around $5 million from fiscal 27 to fiscal 26. The project's estimated completion date was extended from August to October 26 due to delays in the reviews and the Board of Public Works approvals of the second and third portions of the construction contracts. Addressing carbon reduction and the Climate Solutions Now Act to make Blackwell Hall net zero ready, to decrease fossil fuel energy production, to earn a leadership in energy and environmental design green building rating system gold certification is the goal by implementing a geothermal well field, a high-performance building envelope, and utilizing solar panels. The state is funding the Geothermal Energy Initiative and could partially be reimbursed by the Inflation Reduction Act federal tax credits. DLS requests for Salisbury's president to brief the committees on the sustainability elements incorporated into the project, including estimated costs and source of funding, and applicable for federal tax credits. Furthermore, the last part of the construction contract, guaranteed maximum price for, has not gone through the bidding process and may exceed the current funding. Page 4 and 5, the College of Health and Human Services MAG's renovation and expansion project will renovate MAG Center, construct in addition to the existing building, and demolish Devil Bliss Hall. This project will implement a geothermal energy initiative. The estimated cost of this project totals $275 million. Funding will start in fiscal 2028. Page 6, the estimated net operating budget impact will be 5 figures from fiscal 27 to 30 due to the added gross square footage and annualization of this cost. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for Mr. Richards on the presentation of Salisbury University? President Ringer, appreciate you being here. And looks like also we have listed Eli Molden, Aurora Edenhart Pepe, and Eric Berkheimer. Great, okay.
That is correct.
Thank you, Madam President, for being here.
Thank you very much, Chair Chang, Vice Chair Lewis, and the entire subcommittee for your continued support of Salisbury University. Thank you very much to Micah Richards and to Sarah Baker, as always, for their very thorough analysis. We appreciate it. I am joined by Eric Berkheimer, who's my Associate Vice President of Capital Management and Facilities. It is my pleasure to provide testimony to the Maryland General Assembly for Salisbury University's fiscal year 26 capital budget request. On behalf of the entire university, we are extremely grateful for the Governor's and General Assembly's ongoing support for Salisbury University's capital projects. The continued support you provide our university has positively impacted the lives of countless students across the state and strengthened many of the communities on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. Today, I will provide updates on 3 key projects that will enhance student services, expand access to the arts and education, and make critical improvements to the health education facilities. Our fiscal 26 capital budget request includes continued funding for the Blackwell Hall renovation and planning for the College of Health and Human Services building. While the Performing Arts Center is not part of the current fiscal year 26 capital improvement plan, we seek future support for this project to expand access to the arts and enhance educational opportunities. Through these strategic investments, we will continue to support student success, meet shifting workforce needs, and serve the broader community. The Blackwell Hall renovation is transforming Salisbury University's former library into a comprehensive student services center, specifically designed to serve and support the unique needs of each student on our campus. Your support and continued investment to maintain this project in its current place within the capital improvement plan will guarantee that thousands of students have access to vital resources such as financial aid assistance, counseling services, and so much more. The College of Health and Human Services building will advance healthcare education and workforce development across the state and region. Salisbury University requests capital support that will see the creation of a building that replaces an outdated and ill-equipped building, Devilbus Hall, with a new building that possesses sufficient space for SU to train and educate students pursuing careers in critical workforce needs like nursing, social work, and health sciences. Both the state and the university are experiencing a growing demand for healthcare professionals, and this new capital project would enable SU to better address those needs. Finally, the Performing Arts Center is a transformative investment in the cultural and artistic landscape of both the university and the broader community. SU is seeking future support for the construction of a project that represents more than just the construction of a new facility. It is a commitment to expanding creative expression and enhancing educational opportunities for students in the performing arts. The state of Maryland has already made a $2 million commitment to the development of this project through the Department of Housing and Community Development's SEED grant program. That is concluding my report. Thank you again for your support. We sent ahead responses to the question that you posed, but we are happy to answer any other questions that you might have for us. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam President. Are any questions from members of the subcommittee for the President of Salisbury University? Great. That concludes the hearing for Salisbury University. Committee will now move on to Bowie State University, presented by Kelly Norton. And we have President Dr. Amita Hawkins-Brew. She's here. She can come up, and we also have Michael Harrison listed too.
Thank you, Chair. Bowie State University has one project in the 2025 CIP, the Thurgood Marshall Library and Academic Commons. The funding in the CIP for fiscal 2026 is approximately $2.2 million in GO bonds. The summary for the project begins on page 2. The building is expected to be completed in January 2031 and will cost in total $251 million, an increase of $51 million from the 2024 CIP. The cost for this project has grown since fiscal 2023 due to Bowie State submitting a revised program that increased the scope of the project. This project was scheduled to begin in fiscal 2027, but has moved up to fiscal 2026. The 2025 CIP includes $2.2 million for design. The procurement for design is expected to begin in April, and design should start in October. Exhibit 1 on page 4 compares the funding schedules in the 2024 and 2025 CIPs. While the project has moved up in the CIP from fiscal 2027 to 2026, construction is still not scheduled to begin until fiscal 2029. Construction is expected to start at an earlier date, but the project will most likely be completed around the same time if there are no delays due to the 2025 CIP anticipating a 30-month construction period compared to 24 months in the 2024 CIP. Page 2 has the DLS recommendations and is to approve all authorizations for Bowie State University, and that concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Kelly Norton, for your presentation. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for Ms. Norton? Great. Madam President, thanks for being here.
Chairman Chang and members of the committee, and thank you for your time this afternoon. I'd like to thank the analyst as well for her report. Bowie State University is grateful for the governor's support and the support we have received from the legislature as we seek to provide modern facilities to support learning and our academic and research needs. With your support, BSU opened the Martin Luther King Center at the beginning of the fall semester of this academic year. And our students, faculty, and staff could not be more thrilled with this new building and the impact it has had on the learning inside the center, which is most important, the activities that happen inside. It is home to our communication arts, humanities, and liberal arts departments. It has the state-of-the-art classrooms that we sorely need, broadcast studios, and it is also home to our Army ROTC program. Such facilities allow BSU to continue to recruit and retain faculty and staff and students and achieve our mission. We continue to see high demand for Bowie State University, particularly for graduate enrollment, where we saw an increase in enrollment by 8.7% from the year before and a 35.8% increase over 5 years. Total enrollment as we opened was 6,353 students. I'd also like to add another achievement to note. Bowie State University is now ranked number 11 among the more than 100 HBCUs in the nation. And within the last month, we received the prestigious designation as a Carnegie Classification High Research Institution. Such a distinction recognizes the excellence in research conducted by the faculty and students at BSU and enables Bowie State University to further grow our important research initiatives. Such achievements, growth in enrollment, particularly at the graduate level, along with the increased research excellence, underscores the importance of replacing the current library that was built in 1977. We must have a new library and academic commons to continue on this trajectory. We're excited to finally begin the design for the new library and academic commons with the support that you have given. And I thank you so very much. And I truly appreciate your past support for this critical project to replace this outdated library. My concern is that under the governor's proposed budget, we will not complete the project until sometime in 2031. 6 years is a very long time, given the rapidly changing world that we are now operating in. I respectfully ask your consideration for adjusting the timeline and the budget so that we can begin construction and complete the project in 5 years by 2030. Thank you for your consideration. I should have introduced the individuals with me here. To my right is the Vice President for Finance and Administration, Manish Kumar. To my left is Mr. Darrell Williford, the Director of Facilities.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam President, for being here, and to you gentlemen. Are there any questions? Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. President Bro, it's wonderful to see you and appreciated you hosting us a couple of years ago on campus. Just had a question for you. I know one of the things we talked about while we were there, and I know has been a priority for you as well, is the redevelopment of the parcel near the MARC station. I know we've spent a lot of time pushing MDOT on expansion plans, particularly on the Penn Line. Just curious if you have any updates or good things coming over there as well.
That project is moving forward, and I greatly appreciate the support that we've received. We are very hopeful we will be able to continue and progress quickly. We're in discussions with the county as well, and both have been great partners for us. So the project is moving forward. Mr. Kumar, would you like to add anything?
We continue to hold weekly meetings, bi-weekly meetings with MDOT and the county and other folks. So we have been working on the project to move forward.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Solomon. Are there any other questions from members of the subcommittee? Okay, great. Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing for Bowie State University.
Thank you.
The committee will now move on to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, presented by our budget analyst, Sarah Baker. And we have from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Dr. Valerie Shears Ashby, president.
Okay, thank you. UMBC has 3 projects in the CIP. 2 are renovation projects with 1 program to receive funding and not until 28, and the new student services building that is programmed to start receiving funding in 29. There's an update on the Spring Grove campus on page 2, in which $27 million of the $40 million authorization added in 23 is being used to stabilize the site, address state and federal environmental regulations, and prepare the site for future use. The BPW recently approved 2 construction bid packages for utility upgrades totaling $21.5 million. UMBC is currently in the process of updating its facilities master plan, which will lay the foundation for future development of the site. Discussion of Sherman Home renovation starts on the bottom of the page. The capital budget provides $21.2 million to continue construction, which is $7 million less than programmed last year, and this is due to a 3-month delay in the construction schedule related to the discovery of asbestos-containing material. In addition, work needed to reapply structural fireproofing. The budget also included a pre-authorization for 27 to complete construction. The recommendation is back on page 2, and that is to approve the authorization and pre-authorization. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baker, for your presentation. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for presentation? Dr. Shears Ashby, thank you very much for being here. Please proceed.
So to Vice Chair Lewis and to the entire committee, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for your continued support of UMBC And also want to thank Sarah for her thoughtful analysis, as always. Just a few comments. On our new Student Services building, the purpose is to centralize critical student support resources on the UMBC campus that will include proactive advising, financial aid office, transfer student pathways, as well as career readiness facilities for our students. And we thank you for your support of that new Student Services building. I'll mention our Sondheim renovation. That project is emblematic of UMBC's commitment to expanding opportunities in graduate and undergraduate research, producing the next generation of psychologists, human geographers, ecologists, data scientists, and policy analysts. This building is being renovated. It is approximately 50 years old, and so it will provide a suitable home for our students who are doing research as is necessary for an R1 institution. Also mentioned our Sherman Hall renovation is underway with Phase 1 opening in the fall of 2025 and Phase 2 scheduled for the spring of 2027. And then finally, for our Spring Grove project, we thank the state for its support of projects that will stabilize the site, address state and federal environmental regulations, and prepare the campus, the Spring Grove campus, for future use. That concludes my remarks, and we are grateful for your support. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, President Shears-Ashby. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for President? Great. That concludes the hearing for the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. The committee will now move on to Morgan State University, presented by Kelly Norton. And we have from Morgan State University, Dr. David Kwamba-Wilson, and also Kim McCullough.
Okay, thank you. Morgan State University has 9 projects in the 2025 CIP. 4 of these projects are scheduled to receive $104.2 million in gold bond funding in fiscal 2026. The summary of the fiscal 2026 funded state-owned projects begins on page 4. The first project is the new Science Center Phase 2. The new building will house the biology and chemistry departments in the Dean's Office of the School of Computer, Mathematical, and Natural Sciences. The CIP includes $69.6 million in gold bonds for this project in fiscal 2026. The overall cost of this project has increased by $72.4 million to $336.8 million since the 2024 CIP. This increase is being driven by cost escalation for the building structures, which accounts for roughly half of the increased costs. Lab facilities and construction equipment have added another $19 million to the project. The project now includes $17.2 million needed to rebuild a portion of Stadium Way due to the construction of a new stormwater culvert. Morgan State has received funding for the slope stabilization of Stadium Way in the past through the Deferred Maintenance Program. The President should address how this Stadium Way project differs from the Deferred Maintenance Slope Stabilization. The fiscal 2026 funding includes $9.1 million to ensure the building meets state's climate goals set by the Climate Solutions Now Act. The Department of Legislative Services recommends reducing gold bond funding by $9 million for the project costs attributable to the sustainability components. A related recommendation adds language to use pay-go special funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund Energy Efficiency account to fully replace the reduced gold bond authorization. On page 6, we have the campus-wide electrical infrastructure upgrades. This project will construct a new electrical substation as a single point of service for Morgan State, creating a dedicated power source, providing the dependability, resiliency, and redundancy required for the campus to have uninterrupted power. It is required to support the new Science Center and any future projects. The campus hit capacity with the opening of the Health and Human Services building. The total cost is $87 million. The project is scheduled to receive $15 million in gold bonds in fiscal 2026. The project has a prior authorization of $500,000 in non-budgeted funds, which are institutional funds. These funds will allow Morgan State to accelerate the design process, which is expected to begin this month. The President should provide an update on when design is expected to begin. The Deferred Maintenance and Site Improvement Program starts on page 8. Morgan State has identified a backlog of roughly $300 million in deferred maintenance expenses, which this program is meant to address, and while no out-year funding is shown in the CIP, this is considered to be an annual program. The CIP includes $13.4 million in gold bonds for fiscal 2026. This funding includes $9.6 million for the fire alarm upgrades, $2 million for the Murphy Fine Arts roof and exterior doors, and $1.5 million for central heating plant boiler repairs. The remainder funds overages of previously approved or funded deferred maintenance projects. The BRF of 2025 reverted $10 million to the dedicated purpose account that was included in the fiscal 2023 budget. That funding has been partially offset by the program receiving an additional $8.4 million more dollars than planned in the 2024 CIP. Morgan State has used federal HBCU capital funding towards deferred maintenance needs in the past, but these loans might become less accessible with the new federal administration. The president should comment on how HBCU capital funding funds have been and will be used to address the university's deferred maintenance needs. The president should also comment on whether the university has considered issuing its own debt to address these needs. The campus expansion Phase 1 Lake Clifton High School demolition project is found on page 9. The current building is being demolished, and the university will create a redevelopment plan for the site. $6.3 million is scheduled for fiscal 2026, with the total cost estimated at $17.6 million, and it is expected to be completed in mid to late calendar 2026. The cost of the project has increased by $2.1 million due to construction manager's fees. Morgan State was to submit a report on the redevelopment of Lake Clifton. It was not submitted at the time of the writing of the analysis. The president should comment on the status of this report and how the institution will ensure reports are submitted timely in the future. The summary of the out-year projects are on pages 10 through 12, which include the Carter Grant Wilson building renovation project. The renovation will address insufficient space and inoperable and failing building systems. It has been delayed to make capacity for the increased cost of the Science Center and the acceleration of the electric infrastructure upgrades. In total, the project estimated to cost $52.1 million. Next is campus renovations. This program would address projects that have surpassed the DBM definition of deferred maintenance, but will reduce the overall backlog. This program allows Morgan time to clearly identify the scale of projects and submit facility program reports that identify the need of for their renovation. We have the Dixon Research Center renovation and expansion. This project is estimated at $134.8 million and will renovate the Dixon building to house the physics department and construct an addition to house research and support office space. The new physical plant department grounds maintenance building is the next project and will build a garage to house grounds equipment. The department was previously housed in the now demolished Washington Service Center and is temporarily operating out of the Montebello complex, another soon-to-be demolished structure. This project is slated to cost $16.4 million. The final project, campus fiber infrastructure upgrade and replacement, replace and upgrade the campus fiber system to improve reliability and ensure redundancy for communications and life systems. This project is expected to cost $43.4 million. The recommended actions are found on page 3. DLS recommends language to use PAYGO special funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund Energy Efficiency Account to fully replace the $9 million gold bond reduction recommendation for costs related to sustainability. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Norton, for the presentation. Is there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Great. Thank you. We have Dr. Wilson, President Morgan State University. Thank you for being here. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We certainly thank Governor Moore and this committee for the support for Morgan State University. I want to also thank Kelly Norton for the very fine analysis that she has done for us. On my right is David Lachina, Executive Vice President for Budget and Administration, and on my left, Kim McCalla, who is our Vice President for Facilities Design and Construction. Kim has been at Morgan during my entire tenure, a little bit longer, 16 years. Every project that has been undertaken in the last 16 years at Morgan has been done under her leadership, and every one of those projects has been brought in on budget and on time. So no overruns. With that, with the incredible investments that have been made in Morgan over the last decade and a half, we have returned unparalleled dividends to the state. First, in terms of enrollment, we are at capacity at Morgan, 11,000 students coming from every county in the state of Maryland and 46 states across the nation, though 58% of our students hail from the state of Maryland. Also, this is the most transformational period in the 158-year history of our national treasure. It's transformational in terms of research. As I sit here, we have surpassed $100 million already in research grants in this fiscal year. We are just shy, only a few doctorates shy of joining the University of Maryland College Park and UMBC to be an R1 very high research university. We expect to get there in December of 2027, publicly announcing in January of 2028. Also, in terms of that research, that is taking place in some of these facilities that you have invested in, you need to know that we actually are once again returning dividends in terms of patents, in terms of spinoffs. Just in 2023, we had $29 million in research expenditures, $29 million, but we made the top 100 list of universities in the country with regard to patents. And so we had 13 patents on that $29 million in research expenditures. Just in terms of comparison, on that list of which we were a number 78, the university above us, two spots above us, had research expenditures of $560 million and only 16 patents. And so we certainly are punching well above our weight. We are also seeing our students take advantage of these facilities, and they are winning big time on the world stage. I just make one last comment, and then we will go straight to responses. We have started a student investment club at Morgan in our Earl G. Graves School of Business that you've invested in. Our students have real money. We've been able to identify a donor. That fund is going to go to $1 million. They are there, if you will, making the investment decisions, understanding alt finance, and how to be serious players in that industry going forward. So, Chair Chang and members of the committee, you have asked me and my team to respond to some questions, and so let's go straight there. First of all, with regard to comment 1, you've asked me to respond to how the Stadium Way project differs from the deferred maintenance slope stabilization, and I'm going to ask Kim briefly to summarize.
It's actually the same project. It's the Stadium Way slope stabilization project. And that is securing the slope of the Stadium Way down to the Herring Run, and then rebuilding of the road. There's also a water culvert that was being done at for the Science Project, and that will be done by the Science Project at the end of Stadium Way. So the projects are coordinating their efforts.
The next comment, the President should provide an update on when design is expected to begin on the campus-wide electrical upgrades. I can be very brief here. Actually, we are in the process right now of hiring the design team, and we expect that team to fully be on board by June or July of this year. Comment number 3, the President should comment on how HBCU capital financing funds have been and will be used to address the university's deferred maintenance needs. And the President should also comment on whether the university has considered issuing its own debt to address these needs. And I'm going to ask David to summarize that for us.
So I won't repeat the details that are in the comment, but certainly the HBCU loan is self-directed supplement to the support that the states provide for us. We're appreciative of that. We've used over $20 million of those loans in deferred maintenance specifically. And as relates to a market debt, we've really determined at this point that the HBCU loan program is really more advantageous to us. It's at least a half point lower market interest costs. And the cost of issuance is actually a little bit lower. So we are we only have $140 million worth of legislative debt capacity. We are probably about $110 million worth of loans, which are substantially the HBCU loans. And we have a little bit of headroom, about $30 million, which we're actually looking at other very urgent projects which are not on the capital schedule that we may need that money to utilize. So we are using it as a self-directed supplement.
Comment 4, page 9. You've asked MSU should consider the use of a facility condition index. And once again, Kim.
So yes, we do use the facilities condition index and construction index and through the SCAP program, but we are in the process of having all the campuses reevaluated to update that information.
And the final comment 5, page 10, the president should comment on the status of this report and how the institution will ensure reports are submitted timely in the future with regard to Lake Clifton and others. Kim?
So the Lake Clifton report was delayed because we needed to complete the, start and complete the university the main campus master plan, which is getting underway as we speak. As a part of that master plan, we will be determining what projects or what buildings and programs need to be down at Lake Clifton. Once that is identified, then we will be embarking on a master plan and a development master plan for Lake Clifton. But we are meeting constantly with the city of Baltimore and the communities around and making sure that we move forward together.
Morgan State University is landlocked, and so 2.5, 3 years ago, we were able to acquire from the city of Baltimore 59 acres of property that is about 3/4 of a mile or so from the campus, and we are going about the business in a very transformational and methodical way of conducting the master plan for that property, and that's going to take at least a couple of years, but because we want tremendous community involvement in that. We are building for the next 25 or 30 years, not for the next 2 or 3, and that is what you're hearing from Kim McCalla on this. And so you have one recommendation for us, and Chair Chang and members of the committee, we concur with that recommendation. We stand ready to address any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you very much, President Wilson. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for Morgan State University? Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing for Morgan State University. The committee will now move on to the miscellaneous grants programs presented by Jacob Polikoff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Again, Jacob Polikoff for the Department of Legislative Services with the analysis of the miscellaneous grant programs for this year. This year's capital budget bill includes general obligation bond funds for a number of miscellaneous grants. Fiscal 2026 funds reflected in this analysis a total of $147.7 million in GO bonds and an additional $39.5 million in PAYGO general funds for a total of 37 projects, including ongoing multi-year projects. $56.3 million provide funds for grants pre-authorized for this year by the General Assembly at last session's capital budget. 4 projects are listed in the 2025 Capital Improvement Program, and the CIP is ongoing multi-year commitments. The aggregate future commitment to these projects is programmed at approximately $35.0 million from fiscal 2027 through 2030. Of that, $19 million is programmed for ongoing facility improvements at the Maryland Zoo. Some of the exhibits we'll go through today provide an illustration of the total amount of miscellaneous grant funds included for each jurisdiction, a categorical illustration of the type of projects supported by the grants, and a funding history of the total annual amounts of miscellaneous capital grants authorized, along with the annual percentage of the total GO bond general fund PAYGO capital budget authorizations that these grants represent. None of the fiscal 2026 miscellaneous grants include a matching fund requirement. While a matching fund may not be stipulated, most projects require in excess of what the state intends to provide. Exhibit 4 provides detail for projects that are not programmed as multi-year commitments beyond fiscal 2026, for which DLS is recommending approval, or for which technical amendment is recommended. Exhibit 5 provides detail for projects where DLS recommends reducing or deleting the grant funds, and Exhibit 6 provides a comparison of prior pre-authorizations for miscellaneous capital grants in fiscal 2026 made during last year's session to the amount of funding for these projects included this year. As we'll see on page 2, we have a county breakdown of the miscellaneous capital grants for this year. We'll see that Baltimore City has the most funding incoming, followed by Prince George's County, and then Baltimore County, with other counties getting some funding as well. On page 3, we see a list of the categories that these miscellaneous grant projects fall into. We see most of them are for economic development, followed by parks and recreation, and then health. And the yellow line across represents the number of projects in each category. On page 4, we have the funding history for miscellaneous grants. We see this year is our lowest total for miscellaneous capital grants since 2022. and that the percentage has also decreased, from the prior year. The yellow line with the markers shows miscellaneous capital grants as the percentage of the total capital spending in terms of GO bonds and PAYGO general funds. On page 5, we have a analysis of the Historic Annapolis Restoration Project, and DLS is recommending approving the funding for this project. Just for a little background, Historic Annapolis manages and maintains 12 state-owned historic properties through a master lease agreement, with the Department of General Services. This year's proposed authorization supports the ongoing restoration of the James Bryce House to its original appearance and the installation of a life safety fire suppression system at the William Paca House to protect the building and its visitors. Both of these properties are designated as National Historic Landmarks. On page 7, we have an analysis of the Maryland Zoo infrastructure and habitat improvements. And again, DLS is recommending approving the funding. The proposed funding this year totals $4.75 million. Will support the planning and construction of improvements to aging infrastructure at the zoo in Baltimore. The 2025 CIP programs an additional $4.75 million annually throughout the forecast period, which goes through 2030. The Maryland Zoo, just for fun, is the third oldest zoo in the country, occupying 135 plus acres, of which at least 45 acres are developed. In addition to state capital funding, the zoo receives an annual operating grant budgeted through the Board of Public Works, a portion of which can be applied to capital projects which don't qualify for GO bond funds. In fiscal 2026, that operating grant totals $5.63 million. Moving ahead to page 10, we have an analysis of the National Aquarium, which this year, again, DLS is recommending approving the funding. Fiscal 26's proposed funding will support construction to replace the Pier 4 building roof and to construct other critical infrastructure improvements, along with improvements for public safety and lighting enhancements at the aquarium. As of last year's session, the National Aquarium CIP estimated $94 million in capital needs over the next 8 years. The fiscal 2026 funding of $1 million is consistent with the amount programmed in last year's CIP for this fiscal year, and there are no further changes to the planned out-year funding. The proposed funding this year will support completion of the replacement of the flat roof Pier 4 building at the main campus. The roof is deteriorating, which has caused leaks over the Sea Turtle Hospital and the dolphin pools. Notably, the overall project cost increased from $3 million to $3.25 million due to delays caused by insufficient funding. State funding from fiscal 2025, along with proposed funding for this year, will be combined to complete the project, which is due to start this summer. On page 11, we have the Maryland Economic Development Corporation's Cannabis Incubator Project, and DLS here is recommending approving this project with language adjustment. This project will provide a grant to the Maryland Economic Development Corporation, or MEDCO, to renovate the Catonsville Armory to be used as an incubator space for new cannabis businesses. The space will serve multiple types of cannabis businesses, and the project is required by statute. Fiscal 26's funding will serve to complete construction of the project. 2 chapters from the 2023 session required MEDCO to work with the executive branch to acquire, construct, or refurbish at least one incubator space for cannabis. MEDCO submitted a site report in December of 23, which identified potential sites and later received $2 million in GO bonds for the project in the capital budget from session 2023. However, the State Treasurer's Office later advised that bond funding could not be used for the project due to cannabis remaining illegal under federal law. The capital budget bill for this year deauthorizes that $2 million in GO bonds, which is replaced in the fiscal 2026 budget with the $2 million PAYGO general fund deficiency appropriation for fiscal 2025. The fiscal 2026 allowance includes a further $5 million in general funds through DGS to renovate the Catonsville Armory building as a cannabis incubator. No additional funding for this project is projected for the out years, and design is anticipated to begin in April of this year, with construction commencing in July and concluding just over a year from now in July of 2026. On pages 12 through, if you're wondering, I had a post-it note here which would tell me the page number. 12 through 21, we have a list of the projects DLS is recommending approving funding for. Among those are the Annapolis City Dock, the Bowie Racecourse Training Center property and Rosecroft Raceway, Howard County's new Cultural Center, and several other projects, which DLS is again recommending funding be approved for. Exhibit 5 begins on page 22 and shows DLS's recommendations to reduce or wholly delete funding. The first recommendation is to delete $2.5 million in GEO-bond funding for the Adventist Health New Fort Washington facility project. There's no planned spending of state funding in fiscal 2026. Additionally, the $5 million in state funding authorized for fiscal 2025 has not yet been spent. Page 23 has the Baltimore Museum of Art Fire Suppression Capital Improvements. DLS is recommending reducing $750,000 in GEO-bond funding. Also on page 23 is the Bowie Mill Bike Trail, where DLS is recommending deleting funds in the amount of $2.1 million. Page 24 has the Downtown Partnership of Baltimore Strategic Operations Center. DLS here is recommending deleting $5 million in GEO-bond funds. Page 25 has the Glen Echo Park Spanish Ballroom renovation. DLS is recommending deleting $1.5 million in GEO-bond funding. This project would be on a federal property owned by the National Park Service, which is jointly managed by the National Park Service and Montgomery County. Total project cost is estimated to be $10.2 million, including $1.5, which would be provided by the state, despite the property being federally owned. On page 25, DLS is recommending deleting $2.5 million for the Port Discovery Children's Museum. The fiscal 2026 allowance includes that $2.5 million in state funds, mainly for construction. However, the project is also severely dependent on non-state matching funds totaling $89.5 million. And as of the submission of the worksheet, only $550,000 of that total is available. On page 26, we have the Salisbury Regional Airport, the new hangar project. DLS is recommending reducing the GEO-bond authorization by $750,000 in order to enable the county to provide a portion of the funding for the project. At the bottom of page 26, we have the Westport Capital Development, the Cloman Street relocation. DLS is recommending deleting the $1 million GEO-bond authorization for the project due to the share of state funding that has already been provided to the project. Additional state commitments can be deferred to a future fiscal year. On page 28, we have Exhibit 6, which shows a status of pre-authorizations from last session for this fiscal year. A total of 22 miscellaneous capital grants were pre-authorized for fiscal 26 last session. However, only 13 of these grants are funded through the fiscal 2026 budget. The full language of the DLS recommended actions can be found starting on page 29, and I am happy to take any questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Polakov, for a very comprehensive presentation on the miscellaneous grants program. We have several witnesses here to provide testimony. Call them up 5 at a time. Sorry, excuse me, Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry to interrupt. Just curious on the recommendation for the Spanish Ballroom. So, I mean, it is a jointly managed project, and I know that that funding is going to be used to unlock additional federal resources. So I'm just curious, DLS's recommendation. I mean, we often provide capital funding to entities that are not necessarily owned by the state. So just curious why that was specifically singled out.
Okay, there we go. Pardon me. So the feeling of the Department of Legislative Services was that because the project was jointly managed by the federal government and the property was owned by the federal government, that it might not necessarily be the best use of state funding, especially in this particular climate. I'm happy to provide more information, but that was the general feeling of the department when we were crafting the analysis.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm interested to follow up. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Elliott.
Thank you, Delegate Solomon. Thank you, Mr. Polakov. Any other questions for Mr. Polakov on the analysis? Okay, great. Okay, we'll call up 5 witnesses at a time. Each witness has 2 minutes. We have Donna Jacobs with Morton Street Dance Center Incorporated. We have Kevin Kramer. We have Ed Schlesinger with Johns Hopkins University. Jennifer Nichols with Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center. And also Danielle Wharton with Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center. Okay, great. Whoever would like to go, they can go first.
I can start, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you. I'm Donna Jacobs. I'm the director of the Morton Street Dance Center and the artistic director of Full Circle Dance Company, which is Maryland's largest modern dance company in the state. I'm grateful to the governor to be in the budget for $300,000. Morton Street and Full Circle, which is our resident company, have been part of the cultural and artistic landscape for a long time. 33 years for the dance school and 25 years for the company. The school draws students from Anne Arundel, Harford, Carroll County, and of course Baltimore City and County in large measure. And the company draws a dancer from the Eastern Shore and from the District of Columbia. We have been contributors to the community as artists, teachers, employer, purchaser of other services in the arts, and a collaborator, including with the Ballet Theater of Maryland. But most importantly, we've contributed to the lives greatly of our students. It's audition time and acceptance time. They're getting into School of American Ballet, Baltimore School of the Arts, Carver in Baltimore County, et cetera. We've had one student who could, one instance, be our Nutcracker, Sugar Plum, and has been on tour for 2 years with Christina Aguilera and others, and we're exceedingly proud of them. And many of whom have gone on to college dance majors or dance as part of their background to university. The Full Circle has danced from Maryland to Tennessee to Arizona. We've run like a pre-professional school, which is a 10-month commitment, which is a lot for some students. And with these funds, we can build a new studio, bathrooms, which we do not have, interior, new floors, which are really important to be built on sponges to prevent injury, dressing rooms, parents are dressing our students in the cold lobby, et cetera. And we want to be able to not only expand the program that we've had, which has given us the distinction of #1 out of 192 schools in the region, and we're consistently rated top 3 in the region. We certainly appreciate your support, hoping to move forward, hoping to expand, but we also want to give an opportunity to students who have so many activities going on in their lives where they can now take shorter courses as opposed to a 10-month commitment, do it for 8 weeks or something, 6 weeks, and just get exposure to the arts. And we're 250 students strong now, but with this expansion, we can take in as many as 400 to 450 students in a year. And I thank you.
Thank you. Chair Chang, Vice Chair Lewis, and distinguished members of the Maryland House Capital Grant Subcommittee. My name is Ed Schlesinger. I'm Dean of the Johns Hopkins University Whiting School of Engineering. I'm here to respectfully request that you preserve support for our design center proposal, currently funded at $2 million in the capital budget. Governor Moore included an additional $2 million in his supplemental budget. This project will allow Johns Hopkins to design and construct a 35,000 square foot multidisciplinary student design center on Johns Hopkins Homewood campus. The primary goal of the project is to develop a new hub for undergraduate students to design, prototype, test, and manufacture engineering solutions to real-world problems. This framework for engineering education, answering the question of how we teach our students, is critical as we enter a world increasingly disrupted by AI and all it brings to the educational enterprise and how we support our students for success. Thus, in addition to various prototyping labs, the project most importantly includes collaboration areas where students can come together to undertake the activities that can be assisted by AI systems, but which require human ingenuity and creativity. Our current design facilities are undersized, and students working on engineering design projects must utilize multiple separate facilities across campus, presenting significant challenges to interdisciplinary collaboration. This facility will also serve as a hub for activities that could extend beyond Hopkins and bring in students from across the state and indeed across the country. And it aligns with the state's goals of increased economic competitiveness by enhancing the innovation ecosystem in Baltimore City and the state of Maryland. I want to acknowledge the difficult fiscal situation the state is in Johns Hopkins is cognizant of that and appreciates the support in the face of those difficulties. But I sincerely believe that this project will ultimately result in enhanced economic activity in Baltimore and Maryland, and I respectfully request that you maintain support for this worthwhile project.
Good afternoon, Chair Chang and members of the committee. I'm Jennifer Nichols, president of Johns Hopkins Baby Medical Center. I'm honored to be here on behalf of our patients, staff, and the Southeast Baltimore community to express our appreciation for your commitment to strengthening Maryland's healthcare infrastructure. I'm also here to request your support for our critical investment, the renovation of our John Burton Pavilion. Johns Hopkins Bayview has served thousands of patients in need over its 250-year history. However, we face a growing challenge, a lack of sufficient private inpatient rooms. Having a private room when you come to a hospital is about much more than a quiet, restful space to heal. Shared patient rooms present infection control and safety concerns, lead to extended emergency department wait times, stifle our hospital throughput, and add a strain on staff and resources. Each day, we are forced to block or close as many as a dozen shared beds due to infection and safety concerns or gender mismatch issues. And even one closed bed is too many in a state that ranks the 5th lowest in our country in hospital beds per capita. We believe our patients deserve better. The Burton Pavilion project will create 48 new private beds on our campus. This translates to an additional 2,900 patients treated annually and can significantly reduce emergency department wait times, improve infection control, and ensure a dignified patient experience. This project will also have an economic impact, creating more than 150 construction jobs and 50 permanent healthcare jobs. We know that the demands on your budget are significant. This project is not just about Bayview. It's an investment to improve equitable access to care, systemic hospital capacity challenges, and our state's future response to public health crises. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Chang and members of the committee. My name is Kevin Creamer. I'm the program director for the Catholic Charities Intergenerational Center, which is included in the governor's proposed capital budget for a $2 million miscellaneous grant. Through our St. Edward's Workforce Center and our 5 food pantries in West Baltimore, I've had the great privilege of working in Greater Rosemont for over 7 years. This project represents the bold goal of addressing and eliminating intergenerational poverty in our community through engaging with families early and staying engaged over generations. This is an approach that's informed by studies from the Aspen Institute and the Annie Casey Foundation on the impact of sustained family support on community wealth building. And it's based on our history of providing service delivery through Head Start across the street for over 25 years. Our approach is to use early childhood education, 100 classrooms for children 0 to 5, as an entry point to services and relationship for our community members that connects to cradle to career support networks for families, including tutoring opportunities, intergenerational mentoring, basketball and after-school programming, youth leadership development, vocational training, and adult literacy programming. I've had the privilege of serving in this role for over 3 years now. In addition to refining this vision, a big part of my responsibility is making sure that that vision is reflective of and accountable to the voices in the neighborhood. So I just wanted to share that part of what we're hoping this $2 million does is help us to actualize the breadth and depth of the vision the community has presented. Shared community space for things like repasts for older adults, low-income older adults who can't afford space for that, food access, expanding the scope of our recreation programming to address needs following the closure of rec centers in the neighborhood. So on behalf of Catholic Charities and the community partners that we work with, I humbly request for a favorable decision on the budget and appreciate your ongoing support. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much to all the witnesses. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for any of the witnesses? Great. Thank you very much. We'll call up the next set of witnesses. Danielle Wharton with the Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center. Katie Brainer with Glen Echo Park. Daffodil Baez with Adventist Fort Washington Health Center. And from the Baltimore Museum of Art, if you'd like to come up. The Bowie Mill Bike Trail. Downtown Partnership of Baltimore Strategic Operations Center. Westport Discovery Children's Museum, Salisbury Regional Airport, Westport Capital Development, Coleman Street renovation. Is anyone here who hasn't signed up who'd like to speak? Okay, we'll have the three ladies. Yes, sir. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, Daniel Warden was here, but in the interest of time, we'll just let President Nichols.
Great, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Katie Berner. I'm the CEO of the Glen Echo Park Partnership for Arts and Culture. Thank you to the committee and to the chair for having me here today. We're a nonprofit 501c3 that supports Montgomery County, Maryland in operating the historic site of Glen Echo Park as a thriving arts and cultural destination in the state of Maryland. I'm here today to urge you to retain the $1.5 million in funding which was included in the governor's capital budget for the rehabilitation of the Spanish Ballroom at Glen Echo Park. This investment is critical to preserving a Maryland cultural treasure and ensuring it remains a vital community asset. Maryland has been involved in this site for the entire 22 years that I've been the director there, investing in the original capital rehab, and Montgomery County has been operating the site for 22 years. We do work in partnership with the National Park Service, who do own the property, but that's not uncommon in these situations with a historic landmark like the ballroom. Built in 1933, it's a nationally recognized historic venue known for its iconic maple dance floor, one of the best on the eastern seaboard. It's still used the same way it originally was. The improvements that we are proposing include adding heating and cooling. The venue is very difficult to use throughout the year, as well as repairs to the floor and additional improvements. The park has a long history, first as a Chautauqua retreat in the early 1890s to an amusement park with a rich civil rights protest history and now a thriving arts and cultural center. This funding is absolutely critical to unlock federal funds as well as meet a county match as well. Glen Echo Park is a model of a successful public-private partnership managed by the county, operated in conjunction with our organization, as well as owned by the National Park Service. This is a $10.2 million project. The county has committed $3.25 million. The federal government, all told, will end up putting $4.55 million in, has already committed and has started spending $1.3 million. We are also going to do some private fundraising at the end of the whole process to do some final pieces of $1.2 million. But the Maryland's $1.5 million will unlock the federal match and needs to be placed in FY26 for all the various approvals we need to go through. So it's not just a historic building, it's a thriving hub of activity, hosting over 325 social dances a year, 45,000 dancers, and this is without heating and cooling. We think we can do a lot better. The park sees 250,000 visitors a year. There are many different programs that this will support beyond dancing. I know that many of you have been there for events. It's an amazing and beautiful space. Eliminating this funding puts the entire project in jeopardy, so we urge you to protect this vital piece of Maryland's history. Thank you so much for hearing me out today.
Good afternoon, Chair Chang and esteemed colleagues of the subcommittee. It's a pleasure to be with you. I want to also thank you for making time for me to speak today. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I am the executive director of the Baltimore Museum of Art. The BMA respectfully requests your approval of the full amount of $1.5 million included in the governor's fiscal year 2026 capital budget for the BMA. The BMA is Maryland's largest art museum. I'm pleased to say that we were recently ranked by the Washington Post as one of the top 20 museums in the entire country. We beat out venerable institutions in New York and Washington, D.C. We hit, as was mentioned earlier, we hit above our belt. We house an internationally renowned collection of nearly 100,000 art objects. Our mission is to make art accessible and relevant to people's lives, while engaging visitors in critical social and community issues through art and artists. The museum's capital project has already been significantly reduced due to the loss of funding from pre-authorized monies from the state and is now focused on critical and only critical infrastructure. It is crucial for the museum to receive the full $1.5 million reflected in the governor's 2026 capital budget to leverage additional private funding and complete the project on time and within budget. Otherwise, we might be forced to finance a portion of the project, resulting in redirecting valuable resources from supporting our core mission to funding interest expense. The capital project includes 3 things: implementing state-of-the-art fire suppression in 3 first-floor storage vaults. Surprisingly, we do not have fire suppression on our first floor. Installing a new air-cooled chiller to enhance our HVAC system for optimal climate-controlled conditions for our art, and upgrading the Northwest Cone Gallery, which houses our renowned cone collection. Construction began in February 2025 with a 1-year timeline. It's critical that we adhere to our construction timeline, as we have temporarily closed our main exhibition galleries for this project, which has impacted our revenue streams for FY25 and part of FY26. We have also emptied our storage vaults entirely to prepare for the installation of the fire suppression systems. We are deeply grateful for the state of Maryland's generous past support of our capital improvement projects, including critical fire suppression upgrades, and we respectfully request approval of the $1.5 full amount in the fiscal budget. Thank you.
Good afternoon, esteemed Chairman Chang and other members of the subcommittee. My name is Daffodil Baez, and I serve as the president of the Adventist Healthcare Fort Washington Medical Center. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon about our hospital. Fort Washington Medical Center was opened in 1983, thanks to the efforts of the community to address local resident need. Prince George's County residents have some of the worst health outcomes of any region in the state. This is not because residents are uninsured or lack capital or can't afford their care. The lack is primarily due to access, a lack of access to primary care and specialty care. And it is a major reason why so many patients presenting in our emergency rooms and hospitals are so sick, because they delay their care. When we evaluate the data, we see that the state of Maryland overall has a lower average number of beds than the U.S. as a whole, and Prince George's County, in particular, where our facility is located, has the lowest number of inpatient beds per 100,000 at only 69 beds. That is the lowest number in the state. Compared to other counties in Maryland, Prince George's County also has the lowest average number of active physicians. And one of the reasons for this is the lack of clinical space. We have physicians who are currently willing and able to come and establish clinical care practice in Prince George's County, but we're unable to do so because we do not have the physical footprint in which to house them. Adventist Healthcare is committed to helping solve these and other healthcare challenges in the Prince George's County area by building a new medical center with outpatient service capacity, and have acted on our commitment by purchasing land on which the new medical center can be constructed. We even had an on-site visit by Governor Wes Moore where he voiced his support of this project. We thank the state for their support so far of $5 million in 2024. That was not spent because it is impossible to build a partial hospital. So we are concerned that if we lose the $2.5 million allocation for 2025, we gain no forward momentum towards fulfilling the goal of a desperately needed medical center, and Prince George's County residents will be forced to continue to seek care outside of their local community. Therefore, we respectfully request that the funding is preserved for 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your testimonies. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for this panel? Delegate Solomon.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Brenner, it's good to see you again. Thank you for being here. I was just wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit about the economic impact, and then a little bit of, I know the $1.5 million is actually less than was originally requested. So you're making,
I'm sorry, the $1.5 million
was less than what was originally
Yes.
requested. So you're sort of making do with less already.
Yes, we requested $2.5 million from the governor, and we're put in his budget for $1.5 million. And so, you know, we were going to have to try and make up those funds in the project in other ways, and or break it up into pieces that are managed separately in terms of the construction. The economic impact is that, you know, we can serve far more people. We only have 45,000 coming. We believe that number could easily double, as well as the impact on the park as a whole and the region as a whole. I don't know if you know where the park is located, but we're right where Maryland, DC, and Virginia meet, and so we really draw from a wide area, and that bring those people into Maryland. So the impact should be huge in terms of the numbers. The ballroom has limped along not at full capacity because of the lack of air conditioning and full amenities there. So
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
you.
Thank you, Delegate Solomon. Are there any other questions from members of the Capital Budget Subcommittee? Great, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing for today's Capital Budget Subcommittee. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job. I'm going to get in that car.